The weekend earthquake in Boksburg on Johannesburg's East Rand, but felt as far away as Pretoria in the north, caused no injuries, but there were some reports of minimal property damage. But given the event and the fear and fascination about it, let's find out what more we know the day after, especially when it comes to verifying its size and the methodology that goes into understanding it. Chief Scientist at the Seismology Council for Geoscience, Grobbelaar, joins us now. Good evening and welcome to you, Michelle. So there's been so much discussion and we've had several recordings giving out numbers which were different to each other. Is it unusual to have different recordings of its size from different authorities in the immediate aftermath?
Yes, well, firstly, good evening. Thank you very much for inviting me. So the original magnitude was a preliminary magnitude of a 4.7. So what we mean by that is that it was automatically located. So then what we did is we called in our seismologists, and then they looked through the data and verified the information, and then they realized they downgraded it to a 4.4. Then, of course, we also had reports from the USGS. Now, they don't, obviously, our networks, so we've got a seismograph network across South Africa. So our seismograph stations are much closer to the edge, so our information is a lot more accurate. They use, obviously, far less information, so that's why their that estimation of the magnitude was a lot higher. But now we've confirmed that it's a 4.4. We've verified it, we've looked through our data, and that's what that was the final recording.
So that's so interesting, just for us to understand how and where these readings come from and how they are eventually collated and verified. So you're saying your seismographic network is closer to the epicenter, one imagines, or closer to the event, so your readings therefore would be accurate. You'd get something in the beginning, your seismologist will verify, and then you settle on a number. This 4.4, is that the number we now stand? When we recorded in our history books as whatever it was deemed, it would be 4.4 on the Richter scale?
Yes, indeed. So it is a 4.4 that will go down, like you say, in history. And what we use is our own local magnitude scale. The Richter magnitude was actually developed for California. So we've developed our own magnitude scale, which is what we call the local magnitude scale. It is it's very similar to your Richter scale. But in South Africa, we'll call it a 4.4 local magnitude for South Africa.
Wonderful. I think that's going to settle the debate in many a pub and water cooler around the country, with people debating just, exactly what the size and the reading was. Now, we had also interviewed geologist Dr. Gideon Grobbelaar, who says it was possibly linked to the earthquake in Turkey because the African tectonic plate is associated with that plate, and there was a rebounding and a shaking of those plates in that event. Again, it's always good to have the sort of day later, estimation, or, once you've also spoken to your colleagues. What, in your opinion, caused this one?
Again, it is very difficult. Like we have different aspects, different views, different opinions. But currently, because of what we look at what's happened in the past. Now, a general rule of thumb in seismology is if you've had an earthquake in a particular region in the past, you can expect it in the future. The question is really just when will it happen? And of course, that's something that every seismologist across the world would love to be able to do. So from what we've noticed in the past, we've noticed that once the mines in the East Rand had closed down, the seismicity didn't stop, it died down. And then what we noticed, it started to increase once again. And what we've realized is it's probably related to the flooding of those abandoned mines. So as the water starts to increase within those mines, what we see is that it starts to lubricate the joints, and that can then start to create earthquakes. And this is a very common phenomenon. We've noticed it in, for instance, Katsi Dam, in Lesotho. Once the dam was filled up, it then lubricated the fault there and created an earthquake shortly after it had filled up. And so that's what we suspect is probably what happened yesterday.
even though our mining, is limited to a certain depth. It's not 14, 15 kilometers in. It is, and I'm guesstimating here, so don't hold me to this one. But my broad understanding is, around, a kilometer or two into the earth.
Well, we have in South Africa, we have some of the deepest mines actually, but not in this region. We go down to 5 kilometers, but not in this region. No, these are more shallower mines. But it's more the water that is in the actual mine. So it starts to act like a big dam, but underground.
Okay.
And that's what we suspect is basically happening, is that the faults there are being lubricated and then slipping.
So more could happen?
Like I said, rule of thumb, if you've had it in the past, we can expect it in the future. We probably will be experiencing some aftershocks, but the general definition of an aftershock is always smaller than your main shock. So it's very unlikely that people are going to feel those aftershocks. They'll be smaller than your 4.4. So yes, so we can't say it's not going to happen again, because it does. It's like history, it repeats itself. But again, one shouldn't panic. If you do experience an earthquake, the best thing is to just, and you are scared and you fear for your life, then take the necessary precautions. You get under something that's a bit more strong, to protect your head, so like a desk or a bed or whatever. If you're outdoors, you avoid trees and overhead lines, power lines. So you take those necessary precautions. So you don't panic. I know it's difficult to say. Like I said earlier to someone, it's like saying when you see a snake, don't panic.
Right. Instinct.
Okay. I understand that.
Yeah.
but that's generally what you should follow. Is just take the necessary precautions and try not to.
Again, fascinating stuff. Thank you for your time and expertise. Chief Scientist at the Seismology Council for Geoscience, Michelle Grobbelaar. So, Bongiwe is sitting next to me.